Welcome everyone! In this video, we are going to be diving into my top 3 best teams for Noctowl in the Great League. Now, many of you are all very excited for the return of the Great League alongside the other two leagues set to reset later on today at the time of recording this video. So I thought, what better time than now to give you guys a very strong list of teams for Noctowl. I know a lot of you have most likely recently built Noctowl, especially the costume hat Noctowl. I bet a lot of you have those waiting in the wings for just the right team to use it on. So that is exactly what we will explore in my top 3 best teams. So with all that said, let's have a look at team number 1. All right, guys, here we go. Team number 1. And actually, team number 1 is actually team number 4 from my top 5 best Great League teams overall that I put out at the beginning of this season. And it leads with Medicham on the lead, Lantern on the safe swap, and Noctowl in the back. My goodness, team number 4 really took off like wildfire. It's easily one of the most widely utilized teams, and it's so flexible and so strong that you can actually run it in any alignment. Most people generally choose to lead with Medicham. That's the most common variation, although you can lead with Noctowl. You can also lead with Lantern. But yeah, Medicham is nice on the lead to counteract the ever so popular and powerful Bastiodon Shadovic Medicham team. So this team is very strong against that, particularly with Medicham on the lead. Very powerful team. Let's have a look at the scorecard here. And there you have it, my friends. Team number 4 from my top 5 best teams. Very strong and powerful. No wonder it's very heavily utilized in the Great League. It's quite strong and quite effective. You get a B for coverage, A for bulk, A for safety, and an A for consistency. You don't get much better than that, guys. Let's have a look at these matchups here. So, like I said, team number 4 from my top 5 best teams overall in the Great League is very strong. Team number 1 here for the top 3 best Noctowl teams is the same team, so it's just as strong, obviously. So, the matchups here, guys, what I really want to discuss with team number 1 here is if you encounter the Bastiodon Shadow Victory Bell Medicham line, I want to go over how to tackle that, because you're obviously going to win lead. The general play now with that particular team is for them to safe swap the Medicham. It is very tempting to bring in your Noctowl, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to bait out the Noctowl. Do not fall for the bait, guys. What you'll want to do is immediately swap into Lantern and play that out with the Medicham. Depending on your IVs, if you have a very highly ranked Lantern, you can actually flip that depending on if they're willing to give up any shields. In the 1-to-1 shield, it's very narrow. It's not likely that they will play out the 2 shield because they generally want to save at least 1 shield for that Shadow Victory Belt in the back, and that's where you can maybe pull it out, and that really does come down to IVs on your Lantern. But at the very least, you'll be getting that Medicham really low. And then you kind of want to take out the Medicham and control the alignment. That's the key in that against that team. If you can accomplish taking out the Medicham, that would be great. But you could also come in with your Noctowl and farm down, spam the Bastiodon with Shadow Balls, getting it very low, and then you can do quite well with Medicham in the end. Medicham does not need a shield for the Bastiodon. You will need a shield for the Shadow Vic. All you need is 2 ice punches to take that out, and then it's easy claps from there on. That's how you play against that very widely used team. You will win every time if you play it that way. Everything else in between, very strong. Altaria lead, I did want to highlight as well, guys. All three Pokemon have very solid play up against Altaria. It's going to take a team effort. What I would try to do, is get off an Ice Punch. Try and land an Ice Punch. You may even grab a Shield. And if you're really good, you'll want to catch that Sky Attack onto your Lantern and play on from there. But either way, Lantern is the safe swap against those Altaria leads. You should do just fine. Altaria almost always has some Steel type in the back. It kind of has to cover its weakness to Charm and Ice. It usually comes in the form of Registeel. You could see double Steel as well with Altaria on the lead, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, you do want to get that big chip damage or shield advantage, and like I said, if you're really good, you catch that Sky Attack onto your Lantern. But if you have to give up a shield or eat a Sky Attack, Medicham does live a Sky Attack pretty comfortably, and you'll do just fine. And just about everything else in between, pretty straightforward. All other flyers, well, even Noctowl as well. You can play out Noctowl the same way, although I would save swap in my own Noctowl after chipping first. You never want to go into your hardest counter, which would be Lantern. So Noctowl, you're going into your own Noctowl for the mirror after chipping. Altaria on the lead, you're going into Lantern after chipping. So that's how you play those two flying type leads. Deoxys on the lead would be a little tricky, but not impossible. That's not one that you'll really want to stay in there on. You're kind of just going to want to go into, I would say, Noctowl on the safe swap. Because Deoxys will generally have a normal type in the back, maybe even a dark type to protect it from the ghost types, and then play on from there. But Medicham wins leads a lot. In the mirror, it's just a coin flip, guys. You can try and mix things up your best, but the safest thing to do is to just try and take out that Medicham. Soft lose lead if it comes down to IVs. You could even give up shield advantage to take it out if you're making a hard team read, especially if you're reading that it's a mirror team. Controlling alignment could be key to victory there. But again, that's just going to be a coin toss. But yeah, that's about it. Everything else pretty straightforward, I would say. Ghost types, you're getting the heck out of there as fast as you can. A Trevenant lead would be tricky if you're running the Medi lead variation of team number 4 here. Trevenant core breaks pretty hard. And I would say if you're seeing a lot of Trevenants, you might want to switch it to the Noctowl lead variation and see how that does for you. Although Trevenant usage has dropped off by quite a bit with the emergence of all the Noctowls in the meta, guys. But with Trevenant lead, you can still chip pretty hard with Ice Punches. You may even look to soft lose that. I think that's the best way to play it, the safest way to play it, because you're going to be ABA weak no matter what with a Trevenant lead. So, yeah, that's about it for team number 1. Very strong scorecard, very strong team overall, and it leads with Medicham, although you can lead with any one of these 3 Pokemon. That's the flexibility of team number 4 here, guys. You can lead with either one and still do amazingly in the Open Great League. But for the sake of countering the very popular and widely used Basti Shadow Vic Medi team, I would lead with Medicham starting out and then see what you're getting in your particular ELO range and make the adjustments accordingly. So yeah, that is team number 1. And with all that said, let's have a look at team number 2. All right, my friends, here we go. Team number 2. And oddly enough, much like with team number 1, team number 2 here is actually team number 3 from my top 5 best teams overall for the Great League. From my top 5 best teams that I put out at the beginning of this season. And team number 2 here leads with Stunfisk on the lead. Noctowl on the safe swap, and Altaria in the back to close the game strong. So, yeah, again, guys, this is actually team number 3 from my top 5 best teams overall, and it's a very powerful Noctowl team, which is why it's actually team number 2 for my top 5 best Noctowl teams. So, very powerful team. ABB team, G-Fisk on the lead, obviously going to be super weak to fighting types on the lead, most notably Medicham. I think that's the most common fighting type lead that we see, right, guys? Safe to say. Which is why we've got two very powerful and bulky flyers in the back. And the beauty of this team, guys, is it also counters the ever so popular and widely utilized Bastiodon, Shadowvic, Medicham team. You're going to be doing quite well, guys, in anticipation for a lot of people running that very powerful team. If you run team number 2, you're going to be laughing all the way to the bank. Let's have a look at the scorecard here. And there you go, my friends. Identical scorecard to team number 1. You get a B for coverage, A for bulk, A for safety, and an A for consistency. Again, you don't get much better than that. Let's have a look at these matchups here. So, like I said, a lot of you are very comfortable playing a G-Fisk lead. Very comfortable with the matchups. The most challenging aspect of this team is you're going to be maybe facing some very powerful mirror matchups on the lead with opposing Stunfisks. In that case, you kind of just have to play it out. Depending on how aggressive you want to get, maybe you're making a hard team read. You may want to play out the 2-shield scenario and see where that gets you. That's ultimately going to come down to IVs, unfortunately, but it may be worth a shot if you're making a hard team read and you want to control the alignment to play out the 2-shield scenario and see where that takes you. It's always going to be a coin toss in the mirrors, of course. But the Medicham lead, I did want to address that because, as I mentioned, for team number 1, that's easily the most commonly used team that we see in the Great League. So you can safely read that there's undoubtedly going to be a Noctowl and Lantern in the back. That's a very safe team read to make. So in that case, you're actually safe swapping Altaria on the Medicham leads, banking on there being a Lantern and Noctowl in the back. You're going to draw out the Lantern. They may try to chip you first, but in that case, you'll want to shield that because an Ice Punch from Medi, I think, actually does about as much, if not more, as a Thunderbolt from Lantern. So you do want to shield the Ice Punch chip because you're just going to set yourself up for failure if you don't do that and they bring in that Lantern. That's what you'll want to do. You want to bait out that Lantern so that Noctowl doesn't have to see it in the back. Try and grab a shield if at all possible. That may be asking a lot because a lot of Lantern trainers won't generally shield, but you kind of want to get that Lantern low enough to where Stunfisk can have a fighting chance coming back in on it. And then you set up Noctowl to have a decent endgame thereafter. So that's how you play that team. That's going to be the biggest challenge, but again, this team counters is very strong. It's a strong team to run overall, but it's made to counter the Basti, Shadowvic, Medi team. If you're faced with the Swampert line, that's generally Swampert Skarmory with generally classically Sableye on the safe swap, but you could see Frostlass as well. You could also see Drapion in some circumstances. So in that case, you're actually, depending on what you're seeing in your ELO range, if you're seeing the Swampert Skarmory core with a lot of Frostlasses, you're going to want to make the play into Noctowl on the safe swap. But if you're seeing a lot of Sableyes, a lot of Drapions, you might want to consider safe swapping Altaria in that case. It really comes down to what you're seeing at your particular ELO, but you could do well against that team as well. That's about it. Pretty straightforward, classic ABB line. For team number 2 here, again, this is actually team number 3 from my top 5 best teams overall that I put out at the beginning of the season, and it's so good that it made it to my top 3 best Noctowl teams overall, and it leads with G-Fisk on the lead, Noctowl on the safe swap, and Altaria in the back to close the game strong. So that is team number 2, and with all that said, let's have a look at team number 3. And last but certainly not least, team number 3. Actually a fresh Noctowl team for you guys to round out the list. And it leads with Noctowl on the lead, Venusaur on the safe swap, and Registeel in the back. It's more of a balanced Noctowl team, guys. This is not your typical ABB style team that you see on this channel, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with a balanced team, also known as an ABC sort of team. So the way this team is designed, it's designed to set you up for the most success if you happen to run into a Basti lead, but we'll go over that in just a moment. Being a balanced team, you can actually safe swap Reggie as well, depending on what you're reading in terms of team comp for your opponent. But I really wanted to give you guys a strong Noctowl team with Noctowl on the lead. It's meant to set you up for the most success for countering actually team number 1 from this very list, also known as team number 4 from my top 5 best teams overall. This team I built specifically to counter that team, and we lead with Noctowl because most people choose to lead with Medi for team number 4, also known as team number 1 from this list. So let's have a look at this scorecard here. And not bad at all. Very strong and solid scorecard for team number 3 here, especially for a team that's meant to counter a specific couple of teams that we commonly see. You get a B for coverage, A for bulk, B for safety, and an A for consistency. Very strong and solid scorecard for team number 3 here. Now let's dive into these matchups. Like I mentioned, I specifically built this team to counter actually team number 1 from this list, as most people run with the Medi lead variation of team number 1 here from this list. So leading with Noctowl is going to set you up for the most success for those Medicham leads. They will likely try to chip you first. They may even look to play out the 2s. I'm not sure that that's a good idea for them, but you're going to be doing just fine with Noctowl. Beware of the chip, because they'll probably chip you with an Ice Punch and make a play into their own Noctowl. And if that's the case, you know, you guys can surely know what to do. You'll want to go into your Reggie and take care of that Noctowl, and you will preserve Venusaur to sweep the end game. The reason why I went with Venusaur on this team is it core breaks that team quite hard. It destroys Lantern and does very well against Medicham. So preserving the 2 shields for Venusaur to sweep in the end is the key to success against that team, that being team number 1 from this very list here, guys. Steel type leads, I want to go over that Basti Shadow Vic Medi team because it's going to be everywhere, guys. If you encounter that on the lead, you're going to utilize Venusaur as your safe swap because it's going to force them to kind of stay in there a little bit. It's probably gonna throw them off guard quite hard, guys, because Venusaur does very well against Bastiodon, it does very well against Shadow Vic, and you better believe it's doing well against Medicham as well. So they're likely not gonna really know what to do at first. They're likely gonna stay in, and in that case, you're in a good spot. Because then you can align appropriately. Venusaur beats Basti in the 2s for sure. So you're going to have to be shielding those super effective flamethrowers, but those frenzy plants do start to add up. They can tank a couple, but they're going to start throwing up shields, and you thoroughly outpace that Bastiodon. So you want the Venusaur on the swap, on the Basti leads. They're not going to know what to do, so they're likely just going to stay in, and that will set you up to align appropriately. But you do want to keep that Venusaur on the Basti. That's where the magic happens with this particular team. If they swap in Shadow Vic, you go into excuse me, I'm sorry, something grabbed my attention. I'm sorry. Excuse me. If they swap in the Shadow Vic, just do your best to keep switch advantage, because then you can have your Reggie for the Basti and your Noctowl for the Medi. Play out the 2 shields if necessary. you definitely want to shield up the Sludge Bomb, because with that particular team, the play these days is to run Sludge Bomb and Leaf Tornado, in case you guys weren't aware. So you're going to have to, you cannot no shield the Shadow Vic. You have to shield in order to win that. And that's how you beat that team with this team. So not only does this team counter team number 1 from this list, but it can also do quite well against the Basti Shadow Vic Medi line. And you're going to be doing fine against everything else in between. Of course, Lantern, if you're faced with a Lantern lead, you're actually going to safe swap Reggie. Like I said, guys, you never want to safe swap your hardest counter, even if it is the dedicated safe swap. You gotta make a team read, and you're absolutely not going to stay in on a Lantern lead. You're going to safe swap Reggie and play on from there. They will likely meet you with a Medicham, and most Medichams are actually running the recommended Ice Punch Psychic moveset. If they're running Pup, that's unfortunate. But if they are running the conventional moveset, you can actually grab shields in the zeros, which is even better for Venusaur to sweep in the end. Yeah, that's about it, guys. That's what I really wanted to go over with this team. Very strong team overall, very solid. Like I said, I built it to counter team number 1 from this list, and I also had the Basti Shadow Vic Medi line in mind when building this team, which is why we have these 2 Pokemon in the back. So that about wraps it up for my top 3 best teams for Noctowl in the Great League. Should be a lot of fun. It's been a long time to go without Great League, a full 4 weeks, but it's coming back at the time of recording this video later on today at the normal time that leagues typically reset. And Great League is always a lot of fun. So that's it, guys. I had a blast. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, I thank you for watching and keep up the grind. Thank you, guys.